from the world around you. This is Pause for Thought, and you've got fresh old FM on. Now, over the past few weeks, we've had gnomes and lake monsters, but neither of them are all that scary, innit? So, with it just being a week away from Halloween at the time of recording, I figured it'd be time to bring up something a bit scarier. And it's because, it's hard to imagine, innit, how a gnome or Nessie could impact your life, but what about a sort of disease? Like a vicious disease, a virus? Now, we can all be scared about that because it could hurt any of us. And what if it was a virus that could only affect people under very select circumstances? Not your socio-economic factors or race or geographical location. And it'd be the exact same effects whether you've got access to healthcare or not got access to healthcare. A truly debilitating disease where the symptoms aren't just directly related to the disease itself, but by your own actions and all. I don't know if it's real, but catching this disease isn't the worst thing about it. It could affect your kids, your missus, your husband, your mistresses, your son's girlfriends, the local priest, but the person it would affect the most, I would have thought, or the person most likely to be affected that would be your local milkman. Now obviously I'm talking about werewolves, innit? A lycanthropy, as it's also known, a blood disease, and many believe it's only spread directly from receiving a wound from another werewolf. I say another werewolf, you're not a werewolf at the time, but that's how you become a werewolf, is you get a wound from a werewolf. And for those of you that have never watched a TV show, a werewolf is supposedly only ever really a threat to itself or others once a month when the moon's at its fullest. So I'm hoping we might find out why the moon is related to it, and we might also touch on other human-animal hybrids. Now, straight away, I can't help but wonder if the story of the werewolf came about as a means of demonising alcohol. Was it a religious ploy? It's hard to believe, as Christians all believe in transubstantiation, where a bottle of wine can be transformed or turned into the blood of Christ, just like them little wafers can be, or into the body of Christ. So why is it hard to believe that they'd also believe in a man transforming into a bipedal wolf creature? It's not that much of a jump, really, is it? Now, we know that alcohol can change a person from the quietest, most timid villager into a murderous, rampaging mentalist, so it can also turn like a married woman into the village bike if, rumours are to be believed. But at least it isn't like marijuana though, innit? It's not making people gay. Now, of course, booze doesn't actually change people, just like smoking a bit of weed isn't going to change your sexuality, but people do believe in both of these things, albeit more believe that a few beers will make you into a violent, narcissistic sociopath than those that believe that getting twos on the ends of a joint is going to make you suddenly want to stop putting your dick in girls and start taking one up the chuff. So, could the werewolf have come from some mayor or something, or a village leader that didn't want his people to drink and wanted to get alcohol out of the town? Like that guy in The Simpsons where Homer became the beer baron. Just because there's a little weed reference in that episode as well, if you remember. I think at the end, the what's his name now? The copper. Oh fucking hell, Ralph Wiggum, Officer Wiggum, Chief Wiggum. He smokes a joint, doesn't he? At the end of it, I'm sure it's the end of that episode. But some people actually believe you can become a werewolf from drinking, not from drinking your whiskey or vodka, but if you drink downstream in a river from a real life werewolf. Which seems like it's the DNA that lurks in these canny little canids. Is like the DNA itself is like a parasite. Some believe that drinking from a puddle in the footprint of a werewolf will turn you into one as well. So that it's kind of a lot like syphilis, I guess. Syphilis rather than booze. Because syphilis can take 4 weeks to find out that you've got syphilis. It can take up to 4 weeks or so to show itself. Just like becoming a werewolf can show itself, that can take up to 4 weeks. Especially, if you got attacked by a werewolf on the full moon, obviously, because they're a werewolf. You're not going to know you're a werewolf until a month later, 28 days later, which is weird because you've got that film 28 Days Later as well, which is also kind of about the undead and a virus. It's a disease, like it's a zombies in it, but 28 days, so is that a little nod somehow to the moon being related in some form of zombie thing? Maybe we're all going to become zombies because of the moon. I don't know, but having it take 4 weeks though from being becoming a werewolf takes 4 weeks, innit? That's what I'm trying to say. But that makes it hard to pinpoint exactly where people caught it from. Kinda like syphilis. So was the stories of werewolves actually a story about diseases, like sexually transmitted diseases, for example, or sharing bodily fluids? It'd be interesting to see if there's been reports of anyone with an unusually large nose becoming a werewolf, because having a massive conch on you, that'd probably stop you from gulping out of puddles. Now, it probably wouldn't stop you from getting your recyclable straw and going out of a puddle, but then again, if you've got the straw with you, then you're probably compass mentis enough to think to yourself, what am I doing here? Why am I drinking out of all the puddles to drink out of? Why drink out of a footprint? But I suppose puddles would naturally form in footprints because they're dense in the ground, so that's where water would gather. Anyway, a big chin. Mate, a big chin, that'd stop you from being able to drink out of puddles as well. Maybe that's why like superheroes have big chins. But then again, even with a big chin, if you've got one of them big sort of butt chins with the groove on it, you could easily rest your straw on there and still out the puddle, couldn't you? So maybe that wouldn't stop you either. But is that why we've got comic books and superheroes with big chins, like the Crimson Chin in that fairy one on Nickelodeon? Because they'd never be able to really become werewolves, would they? Now, it's weird that both this, we'll call it a historical illness, and a very modern illness of today could be avoidable by simply wearing masks. But we're not gonna dwell on that for any longer than literally that. Now, I suppose it could have been a way for people to stop others from catching syphilis. But why not just tell them your dick will rot? I mean, a lot of diseases spread by bodily fluids, and a lot of the diseases spread by bodily fluids seem to have the chance of driving people fucking batty, innit? Like, not just of the thought of your fella bringing boils home and spreading them to you and all, but actual changes in brain chemistry. Like, there used to be people that would get syphilis and they'd go fucking mental. So maybe this was a really good way of changing people's perceptions before the invention of reliable condoms. I know that they apparently used to use animal intestines as johnnies, but they're permeable, innit? Otherwise they wouldn't have worked as intestines in the animal. Though they do work as sausages and you don't lose your pork mince through the microscopic holes in the meat tube. And they do hold water in as well, so I don't get why we don't just use intestines as condoms. I mean, there's obviously reasons why we can't. They're fucking, it'd be disgusting, wouldn't it? And you keep them in brine as well once you've cut them out of the animal, so it'd be quite salty as well and probably really sting. But then again, going in the sea doesn't make your dick sting. But I don't think I've ever, wiggled me knob around in the sea, you know. I've never paid it attention anyway. I'm not really a big fan of going in the water. I don't know. But if it does go through the microscopic cells though of a intestinal condom, does that mean that it would just affect you on a small scale? So the lycanthropic cells, if that's the term we would be using, as you know, let's call ourselves scientists for the next hour, historians even, could the lycanthropic cells affect every living thing? So does it make your cells, say you get a cutting like you just in the back of your hand or in your arm or something, does it then make all them cells act subservient to other cells, like making them into dog-like creatures, dog-like cells, so they start like shouting at the cell membranes as the information's being delivered to the nucleus like a dog would with a postman? I don't know, but I'd like to see what happens with a fish. Like, can you turn a fish into a werewolf well, it'd still be a werewolf, wouldn't it? But it'd just be like fish-like. Would it go all furry and go rabid and get would its snout still be a fish and look like a fucking sturgeon, or would it get like a head like a hammerhead shark? Getting furry like a furry hammerhead shark, mate? And start just fucking attacking all the other fish around it, mate, going fucking mad because it's a werewolf fish. But fucking hell, the moon plays a part in it all, particularly a full moon. Now, does that mean that the werewolf cells are sort of photosensitive, or is that something more than light? Is there something more than just light that's being reflected from the moon? What if there's radiation being bounced off the moon towards the Earth, but they have to keep spinning the moon so that it doesn't just burn away? Is that why the moon's white? Because it's been bleached by all this radiation? Because I've always wondered if the moon is actually sort of concave in shape. Is that why the shape changes? It spins around in the sky. like a big sky dish, a satellite dish, like an even bigger George Rule Bank, mate. For any northerners, anyone from around near Manchester that knows what George Rule Bank is, you might not know what that is, but it's like a big fucking satellite dish, innit? Imagine looking though into a bowl from different angles. You'd probably see the same shapes as you'd see from the moon. You know what? Fuck it. I've already gone off from werewolves again, and I'm only 10 minutes in. So do it now. I'm gonna play you a song. Go and grab yourself a cereal bowl, a little bowl, plop it on the floor in front of you. Do yourself a little press up in front of it, or a little side to side sort of movement with your head. To just lie down and move your head round in circles near it and watch the shape that you see change because it's a concave. Just look at the top bit of the bowl, the hole, and look how that shape changes colour and changes shape and would resemble the moon. Maybe the moon is concave. You get in the Discord, right? Get in the Discord on the live chat, and you tell me that when you do that with a bowl, it doesn't look like the fucking moon. Right, let's have something off the Summer of Sam album, that new album with Exhibit, Be Real and Demrick. This one's also got someone called Carmony Fortune on it and all, and the song's called Quarantine. Looking at early mentionings of werewolves, and one that obviously stands out is in the Epic of Gilgamesh. It's said that the master herder, also known as the shepherd, was transformed into a wolf so that his own shepherds and dogs would chase him and attack him. In Christianity, God and Jesus are also referred to as the shepherd. Now, that's pretty weird, isn't it, that? Fucking weird how everything seems to have links as well to this ancient poem. So, ancient Iraq, right, that seems to be like one of the earliest mentionings, and a lot of people tie the Epic of Gilgamesh into the Anunnaki. And as I keep saying, they were reported to do the old bit of a human hybridization, and they were even recorded as it. Like, you got Ra, that looks like the fucking bird, and you got the, like a Minotaur looking one. You've got, oh god, what was there's Baphomet as well, that looks like a goat with a man, a goat horns on a man kind of thing. I can't remember exactly, I think that's right, but one that looks a bit like a crocodile and a bloke, which again, I can't remember the name of, but still, they're there, innit? There's reference to this sort of thing, this human-animal hybridization again. Other historical texts, though, they seem to tie the werewolves into a punishment from the gods, and then even in similar, within that same religion, so that's ancient Greeks, where what they used to believe, they also believed that Zeus himself was a werewolf, but other variations of stories of Zeus has him actually being a werewolf himself. Well, and like I say, imposing lycanthropy on others as a punishment. So, do you reckon that the aliens have a sort of ray gun that causes this? Or could it have been a manipulation of reality on their part? We're led to believe that things can't just transform, so there must be a chance that the aliens or gods have the ability to change what we see through our eyes, seeing as it was such an instantaneous thing that they recorded. Maybe they can only fire this ray gun when the inverted face of the moon is perfectly aimed at the Earth. Maybe I've been wrong, guys, and there's not a DNA splicing facility within the moon. Maybe it's a machine that can implement changes in our reality, like in the Truman Show where they've got all the dials and switchboards and stuff. Or maybe they can only fire up the werewolves when they can properly see the Earth from the moon. Maybe that's why there's craters, instead of the craters being from impacts of asteroids. Maybe they're more like portholes, which is weird because, well, you could even go as far as to say it's fucking incredible, mate, that you could have portholes on the moon. Because I've always thought that the way to get to the moon the best way would be through a portal. Now, I know they just sound similar, and that might just be it. This might just be a coincidence, but etymology, it seems very important throughout history. So, could that be a thing? Could there have been portholes on the moon, and then that's been twisted and changed by, like, say, conspiracy theorists and that, to make it seem like there's portals on the moon or portals to the moon? I don't know, but could it be why language seems to be changing so rapidly all the time? Is whoever created emojis actually like our saviour and trying to prevent the changes in language? Surely if we could all recognise that a sad face means sad, then that prevents a need for slang terms and eradicates it completely. It could also mean that by eradicating slang, though, that people can't speak in secret like Cockney criminals used to in pubs. So what if words are actually magical? Which, I know that's a jump, but you got that Japanese fella, what if I say fella, he was a scientist of sorts, a businessman, scientist, author. He was called Masaru Emoto, a name which I'm possibly butchering, who did studies and released books saying that exposing water to positive and negative words and emotions would result in a difference in crystal formation when the water was then frozen. Pretty weird though that he was called Masaru Emoto, but he dealt in emotions. I don't know if that's if he changed his name for English translation to help with that, with the branding. If he was a good businessman and author, maybe that's something he did. Don't know. But he claimed water with positive intentions aimed at it would create beautifully formed geometrical patterns, whereas the negative words and threats would cause the crystals to be incomplete, as would the water that would be sourced from infected or polluted sources. So he did compare them. They were like, they moan at him saying he wasn't properly scientific, he didn't have a control. But if you're screaming cunt at a bucket of water and then freezing it and it goes weird, and then you get polluted water and freeze it and it goes weird and looks the same, then surely he was onto something. Now, and then he compared the water where he'd be like, "You're lovely, you are," and you know what, I've got to say, you've got quite nice cheeks. I really like your cheeks and those eyes. You've got beautiful eyes. And I tell you what, do you want to go for I know it's probably you don't really want to because you're a bucket of water, but do you want to go for a drink sometime? He buttered it up, and he compared that to pure mountain water, and it supposedly looked very, very similar. He also claimed that electromagnetic frequencies and ultraviolet light would help reset this water. Pretty much everything in the world and all is water in one way or another, like we are at least. So I suppose the question here is, are supermarket bosses actually our real life superheroes? Is the CEO of Morrison's just trying to save the world, or is he just fucking scared shitless of werewolves? Because they tell us that the ultraviolet lights in the bathrooms of Morrison's and that are to stop smackheads from shooting up in the cubicles. But realistically, when you think about it, I've never seen a smackhead hanging around in Morrison's. Morrison's is usually quite upmarket, isn't it? In my opinion, Morrison's is upmarket. Obviously, if anyone's listening from Morrison's, I do believe you're quite upmarket. And if you're looking for a bit of voiceover stuff, get in touch. You can get my email address from my website, worldaroundyou.com. That'd be nice. Or if you want to show your appreciation, Mr. Morrison's, find my Patreon. You send us a couple of quid. But I've never seen a smackhead in Morrison's. But saying that, I've also never seen a werewolf in Morrison's. So could the two be entwined? Like, if you take into account the antimicrobial properties of silver, you could put the silver into the door handles and the taps of supermarket toilets, because that would at least explain why toilet doors are always pulled towards you to get out of the room, which doesn't make sense. You'd think that they'd want something where you can do it open palmed or with a closed fist or with your elbow to push the door open, because does everyone really wash their hands if they've gone for a piss? I noticed that Jimmy Carr bit about, I had a shower this morning, I know my knob's clean, I don't need to wash it because I've been for a piss. But there must be people that think like that and believe that, innit? Like, there are probably people like that. Sometimes I'll be dead honest, guys, I've looked at toilets, like the sinks in toilets, and gone, you know what, I'll take my chances. I really will. I'll take my chances. Anyway, you touch the toilet taps and then you touch the door anyway, so your hands get manky regardless. Them doors should be pushable rather than pullable. Pull them to get in because you're going to wash your hands when you leave anyway, aren't you? Or you should do. But if the doors are like that and there is silver actually in the handles to keep them clean and to take away the bacteria, because it naturally destroys bacteria as far as I'm aware, does that mean that that's done so that werewolves can't escape? And does that mean that the werewolves get trapped in there, but they don't know the werewolves, innit? They're still people at this point, and they touch the door and like, fucking hell, like, cunt, trying to get out this door, but they can't pull it. And by the time they go and get the toilet roll so they can touch the door handle, the fucking time police or the men in black have dived out of the mirror, out of this fucking two-way mirror in the bathrooms, because we know from a study by a psychologist called, I think, Milgram, who fucking recorded men having a piss and then was like, why are you getting nervous while I'm pissing you? Oh, he gets very nervous if I'm this close with the camera. What happens if I hold it closer to his dick? See, that was weird. Why do that unless you're like the men in black or the time police and you want to be able to catch werewolves in bathrooms? Anyway, let's have another song, because you might have noticed I like to sometimes play songs by Mancunians, so here's Ian Brown's newest song. Now, this is very different to the hip-hop I normally play, I suppose, but it's a good song, I quite like it, and I am partial to a bit of Ian Brown. As I used to have a friend now that used to sneak up behind me and say, I like to rub myself to the sounds of Ian Brown. So, but that's not what got me into Ian Brown. Obviously, I was aware of him, but it always comes to mind when I say it. So I thought I'd share that with you. This is Little Seed, Big Tree by Ian Brown. Masaru Emoto claimed to be ridiculed by a lot of scientists, as I touched on before. They knocked his lack of so-called science that backed up his claims. Other than him performing the experiment in front of people and tirelessly making records about it, which to me, that's science. One of the main reasons, though, that scientists claim that it's untrue is because they claim if it was real, then Emoto-san would be rich, like stupidly rich, richer than any of us could possibly imagine. Now, I don't know whether he was or he wasn't, because he's dead now either way, so he wasn't available for comment, but I just hope that he was happy with what he discovered, whether it was true or not. That's a life's work there, innit? So he's got to have put a lot of time and thought into it. He must have truly believed it, cared about it to do that. The scientists, though, that used to ridicule Masaru would have more than likely accepted and perpetuated some of the so-called science surrounding, say, HIV in the 1980s, or maybe Nixon's war on drugs, simply because it was all done within the formula created by other scientists. Now, I think I've said this before, but scientists are people that have been indoctrinated really, really well. Like, really, really well. Now, I'm not saying that they're not intelligent, because obviously they are, but some of what I'm saying probably sounds intelligent. You know, some of what I'm putting across to you might sound like it's well put together, but that doesn't mean it's true, and it doesn't mean that I am intelligent, innit? Like, any dates and names I've given you are real, but the links between them probably aren't. The whole idea of science is supposed to be to further humanity, whereas in reality it seems like it's just being used to make money. Like for example, think about shampoo, innit? With something that we probably all use. Like, we probably all use shampoo or toothpaste, but let's go with shampoo. We probably all use it. So if someone developed a shampoo that you only ever needed to use once in your life, then that person would probably be killed. If someone developed a face scrub that didn't pollute water, they'd probably be silenced too, because this whole industry surrounding cleaning water. Think about how many jobs would be lost, or how much money would be lost in contracts, like governmental contracts, if people actually made environmentally friendly products. The most environmentally friendly things would be built to last, or they'd be built so that anyone could fix them at all, like you could fix them just from home. But they'd be created so that would mean that we would no longer need people like plumbers or electricians, which wouldn't be good, would it? Because obviously plumbers and electricians are needed, but I'm not saying that they're not. I'm not saying they're not important, but the electrician or the plumber has to drive to your home to carry out these repairs, so that would make it immediately not environmentally friendly. You've got these other things you could look at like that, though, with the environmentally friendly side of stuff. You know, like you've got rechargeable batteries, but realistically, is a rechargeable battery environmentally friendly because you've got to plug it into the wall anyway? So what's the difference? But this isn't supposed to be about the environment, it's about werewolves. So getting back into werewolves, let's look at some recent attacks from around 30 years ago. So we're going to start in 1989, occurring again in 1991, and with a third appearance within about 5 miles away, with a very similar time frame. It's pretty weird that, isn't it? There's a fair few sightings, but these are all quite close to each other in time and distance, which makes me think that there could actually be another explanation. But it turns out and all that one of the authors of these weird websites, they do and all. I thought it might be an adolescent Bigfoot or something like that, you know, or UFOs or aliens. That's what I was kind of hoping for. But someone's managed to dig out an old article, a scientific paper, that links it to an unfortunate disease, like lycanthropy, but links lycanthropy to an unfortunate disease, which seems like someone as a scientist trying to explain something in scientific terms rather than going, yeah, werewolves exist. But I can understand why they would do that, but it seems like a horrific thing to do to someone, done it realistically, to say, oh, you've got this awful disease and you look like a fucking werewolf, mate. That's what they are, that's what they're werewolves. Them just seems cruel, like playground tactics, like just bullying. I've always thought that scientists would probably be quite nice people, because I've always assumed if you're intelligent then you're more than likely going to be nice to people. generally speaking, because you understand that being nice to people will get you further in life, but maybe it doesn't. Could be wrong. Porphyria disease, spelled Porphyria disease, specifically Porphyria cutanea tarda, can cause tissue destruction in the face and fingers, skin lesions, and severe photosensitivity, like a werewolf. The facial skin may also earn a brown pigmentation, and they may have personality disorders along with abnormal hair growth, which I would argue that a werewolf would have a personality disorder, and obviously the abnormal hair growth. Abnormal in the sense that it grows overnight and disappears by the morning and doesn't seem to shed. They don't seem to shed their hair, they just sort of retract it back in. Now imagine how uncomfortable that is for the rest of the month. Maybe werewolves are just living in agony for the rest of the month, who knows. This disease though, it can be hereditary and all, and taking into consideration the stereotypes of the American countryside, it could be argued that inbreeding may have resulted in these unfortunate little bastards roaming the country roads, going out at night time as to avoid blistering from the sunlight, getting angry because they've developed personality disorders, though the only thing this doesn't truly explain is their agility, because werewolves are always said to be able to run rapid, innit, like chase after cars. Even on this website there was a story of one of these so-called what they alleged on the website realistically is a porphyria disease person, or someone with the disease, apparently chased after a car and dived on the boot, but because they had wet hands slipped off, which seems fucking mad. But that a person can't do that, especially if you're fucking covered in blisters. I mean, I imagine with a blistered body that's weakened by a disease, that it'd be a struggle to walk, mate. You know, that. But then again, that'd explain the hobbling and weird stance that werewolves seem to have, where they'd stand with their legs bent and apart. But it would definitely directly oppose their ability of super speed. Though, if we do look at movies, we're led to believe that inbreeding causes super strength. Like in Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Leatherface is a pretty strong guy, innit? And there's other inbred characters as well, like fucking that one where they're all in the mines. They seem pretty strong, them, and you'd have to be strong, like strong-willed and strong-bodied, to be able to crawl around in mines for your entire life. Imagine how strong you would be. I think people would probably be a lot stronger generally if we got around on all fours all the time. Could the witnesses themselves be the blame for the demonisation of these brothers, sisters, mothers and fathers, which, realistically, if they're inbred, there's a good chance that these 3 werewolf sightings were 3 different people with all 4 of those titles, you know. They could be brother and sister, mother and father. Like, maybe not all to each other, but, like, I don't know how, you know, like that fucking song about Jerry Springer that Al Murray made up, your sister is really your brother, your uncle is really your lover. But anyway, you know, we all know what inbreeding is, and that the fact that, you know, it could be a father who's fucked his daughter, or the brother and sisters have had children. Either way, pointless. It's a fucking rabbit hole that we don't need to go down. But the demonisation of werewolves dates back much, much further, at least in America. Again, obviously not as far back as Mesopotamia, as far as I can tell, but a lot like with the lake monsters, there are stories of werewolves in Native American culture too. But earlier, we also learned that these bushy tales were told back in ancient Mesopotamia, as I just said there. But is it true? Could that be a lie and all? Could the age of America as we know it be a lie? Could America as we know it be more than 300 years old? Has history somehow been extended? Masuru was regarded as a pseudo-scientist. So are psychics and clairvoyants. But all throughout ancient history there are mentions of them all. So, like, what are we to believe? Like psychics, clairvoyants, werewolves, vampires, fucking all that sort of stuff. What, we just believe that doesn't exist? We could look into the beliefs of another human hybrid for a bit of evidence, who is apparently well documented and sort of believed in by scientists, you know, and historians and politicians, Joe Bloggs from the corner shop, everyone, loads of people know this human hybrid, this alien human hybrid, Jesus, or at least what a bloke called Fomenko, Anatomo Fomenko, what he believed about Jesus. He believed through the use of mathematics that Jesus actually lived from 1152 to 1180 something, which in itself distorts the whole history of the world and that as we know it in the Western world, doesn't it? Everything changes if you move where Jesus was born, because then it's no longer the year 2020. It's actually the year. Should have fucking put this in the notes to try and work that out. It's the year fucking 800 and something ish, give or take. You've all got access to calculators in front of you. I'm not going to bore you with actual maths. It's hard to imagine what that actually means for us, though. Like, what would that mean if it was only the year 800? Does that mean that we've advanced twice as fast as we've been led to believe since the year 0, or does it mean we've advanced just the same, but there are huge chunks of history that are left unknown and we're not told about? Like, for example, the 1,152 years before Jesus' birth, for example, maybe. Could this history be unknown because of various catastrophic events, like what's believed by the people who believe in the Anunnaki, or even the people that believe in God, with the floods and stuff? Maybe it was a flood that wiped out history. Maybe it was a nuclear war, little nuclear winter, It's hard to tell. But an interesting revelation from this guy's studies is that Egyptian scripture and tablets documenting their history detail specific details about horoscopes, which are all built around the placements of the stars, specific placements of the stars on them times. This means that they can actually be backtraced, and the actual dates of them can be discovered. These dates turn out to be around 1,000 years later than what we're taught about ancient Egypt at schools. And could that be why we all get taught about this at such a young age? It's never made sense to me how someone would think that we need to know about this at the age of 6 or 7, whatever age it is you get taught about ancient Egypt. I think I was about 6 or 7 because I can remember the room in school that had it above the little, sort of like a double doorway with outdoors. But now, seeing it from this angle, it seems like brainwashing, innit? Maybe that's why schools openly encourage bullying. Like, you can argue that schools don't encourage bullying openly, but you literally get lessons on what bullying is while you're in school. Like, veiled as things to look out for. Like, if you see someone calling someone fat boy, tell someone. When realistic though, when you tell a kid you can tell someone he's a fat boy and other people might laugh at him, that means you're getting a laugh, innit? You're getting a cheap laugh. The teachers there are teaching you how to bully other children. It's a how-to guide, isn't it? Like, I could fucking bring it out one week. Here's how to bully kids in school. It's a how to make people miserable, and that's really all that school is generally anyway. And you couple all this misery and potential trauma with the lessons being taught, and that equates to brainwashing in a nutshell. Yeah, round and roundabouts. And just think about how bad school must be if you've got porphyria disease. Now you can tell I keep having to say take a pause before I say that because it's such a fucking difficult word. Every time I see it I want to say porcupine, so I go por and then it's not a C, it's a P, so porphyria, could be porphyria disease. The whole world is being manipulated though into believing that you're not even human, so it goes further than school. You're even being manipulated. It's not even that you're not human, mate. People are being manipulated there to think that you're a monster, potentially. Now, I've looked at some photographs of these people, and it honestly looks like every single moment of their life would be painful, like searingly painful. Just, I can't even imagine what that would feel like to have that disease. That I imagine they're born with it being predominantly hereditary, but so they would get used to it. They're probably hard little bastards, but it looks like it'd be sore. It really looks like it'd be sore. But we already know that kids pick on special needs children. That's what the 90s hit film Forrest Gump was all about. A film that was released as well not long after these sightings of werewolves in America. Could that have been part of the campaign to besmirch the disabled people of America? We may never know. We may never know. So I did a little bit more looking into porphyria disease, and I found stuff that suggests a way that can help treat it. And obviously, I'm going to say here, I'm not a doctor. I can't even, in a lot of people's eyes, I can't even properly fix dead animals. So, let alone help living people, or advise how living people get better. But anyway, someone seems to think that people with this disease can actually help themselves by consuming blood, human blood, which is pretty fucking weird and dark. Because the heme, which is part of the blood, the hemoglobin, I don't know much about it. As I say, I'm not a doctor, and when I read about it, it didn't really clarify what it was. But that bit of heme there, that bit of the blood heme, which could be the iron, fuck knows, it sounds like it'd mean iron, that they're apparently lacking in that. So by consuming blood, that means that it can be absorbed through the intestine. So blood can be absorbed through the human intestine, allegedly. Don't know if it's true, fuck knows. But it's probably going to seem like I'm obsessed with the idea that every single thought stems from somewhere else and nothing's original and nothing can just exist and everything's linked. But I'll refer you again to Texas Chainsaw Massacre, because don't they eat people in that film? Isn't that what that whole film is fucking... That's what it's about, innit? People. Weird inbred hillbillies, for want of a better word. Hillbillies is probably the wrong word. It's probably offensive. I don't know. I'm not American. I don't know if hillbilly is offensive. And countryside dwelling folk, let's call them, in this, because I think they do live in the countryside, innit? I don't know what makes a hillbilly a hillbilly. I don't know. Do they have to live in mountainous regions? I don't know. Why would the word hill be in there? And then what's a billy? Does it mean goat? Is it like a kid that grew up in the hills? Is that where hillbilly comes from? Because it's a young'un that grew up in a mountain? I don't know. But think about this film though. They eat people in it, and you think about a lot of films about inbred people though, and disfigured people. They all seem to revolve around them eating the outsiders. Though deformity-ridden inbreds aren't the only possible excuse for lycanthropy in the world. Some Native Americans tell stories of what's called skinwalkers, a monster with resemblance to the werewolf, an animal-like body, red glowing eyes, and fucking vicious, mean little bastards, considered to be a shapeshifter. These, called skinwalkers. I don't know. I was going to say demons, but demons don't seem right. Now, this would also tie into an encounter that I read about that a woman had whilst her husband was working away. Now, I don't want to slander this woman, and that's not my intentions. I'm not. It's just spitballing ideas, you know. But this woman, supposedly, while her husband was working away, she saw a monster resembling the illustrations of these skinwalkers. But when she looked back out the bedroom window again, she saw a person run away from the bush that the monster had retreated towards. Now, there's the slight chance that this wasn't a shapeshifter. Only slight. I'm not doubting her. You know, I don't want to disparage her. But it could have been one of the locals, just one of the locals in the area who knew that her husband was away, and he either wanted to play a prank on her, or he wanted to make it seem like she'd feel like she needs a bit of protection at night whilst her husband's away working or doing whatever he was doing. Maybe she was just simply cheating on her husband whilst he was away, and she was worried that someone might have seen a scantily clad bloke running from her window, so she developed a whole story around it, because in the story it also says that she moved her bed just before she saw it. So if her neighbours had heard the bed moving, and then she sees this monster running away from the window, maybe it was just a way of saying, you know, we had a bit of a scuttle, and then he climbed out the window. But she didn't want the neighbours to know that, because, you know, people talk, don't they? Especially idiots that get given radio shows for no real reason. But maybe the bloke that looked like a monster though was an actual monster as well. Maybe she wasn't trying to cheat on her husband or out like that. Maybe he was a monster. He not the hairy, eat you alive kind of monster. Maybe he was going to go and try and take advantage of this woman while she slept, but couldn't figure out the window locks, for example. Alternatively, maybe the person was having homosexual relations with her husband. Maybe the woman was normally quite a deep sleeper, because a secretly closeted husband would normally drug her so that he could go, you know, take it up the chuff from this fella that goes from house to house. Maybe it wasn't that seed, you know. Maybe these blokes were genuinely in love, but the withdrawal from drugs that she never knew she was addicted to was causing her to hallucinate, you know, as a side effect, and obviously having a bit of insomnia as well. Anything at all is possible, especially when you consider that the Navajo, Hopi, Pueblo and Apache all have their own stories of skinwalkers. Some of the Native American traditions believe that skinwalkers were created when good-hearted medicine men used indigenous magic for evil purposes, whilst others believe that anyone at all can become a skinwalker so long as you commit a terrible taboo, which, coincidentally, I suppose would include inbreeding. You only have to go onto like Pornhub or Porzo.com to see that incest porn is considered taboo. So maybe the werewolves were actually just inbred people. Interestingly, there we've mentioned magic and taken into consideration Jesus' powers, otherwise known as miracles. If you take that into account, Fomenko's ideas, then that puts Jesus around the years of 1130 in our time, not in Fomenko's time, or give or take a few years, which in Europe was a time that witches were believed in, and the Christians were travelling around the world starting to kill off the witches. Around this time, there were also beliefs in witch sabbaths, or a witch's sabbath, where so-called witches would attend these like meetups, like a meet and greet kind of thing. They all get together, have a couple of drinks, maybe drink a bit of blood, maybe rape a goat. I don't know the different things on the internet about it. A bit weird. Got some of this out of a book and all. They meet up, like I don't know. Not meeting up like meeting up at a pub, but they meet up to discuss witch stuff, like car enthusiasts would. Except they'd kiss the arseholes of massive toads and cats' bumholes, rather than just merely like licking each other's arsehole like a pair of car enthusiasts would. But using witches and Fomenko, we can potentially bring in the reptilians too. Because you knew I would. How could I not? There was a group of so-called witches at one point in Italy where Christians stem from. Christians stem from Italy, so we're told, with Rome. Rome's in Italy. And there's a group of witches that stem from Italy as well. This group was called the Sibyl of Norcia, or the Sibyl of Norcia. And they're said to be able to transform into horrible snakes, which are a type of reptile, which would mean as a person they would be also like a kind of reptilian-human hybrid, I suppose. I forgot to say it, but skinwalkers can apparently be more than just wolves. They can take on any form of animal, fucking turtle, rats, chickens, snakes. They're supposed to be able to become a fair few different animals. But during the times of the witches, there was also a time where they were believed to be devils around in that time as well. And they could also become different types of animal and all. Now, I'm not suggesting Jesus was an animal, and I'm not trying to get you round to the idea that maybe the witches were real, but maybe the gnomes were real. Maybe they still are. But maybe the Romans, or the Russian horde, as referred to by Fomenko, were responsible for eradicating the magical beings from the known world. It's a trope that's used a lot in video games and stories, that this sort of militarised force moves in to try and industrialise an area. In doing so, destroys and kills off all the magic people in the area. But is that the case? Because I don't know. Because I think it's more likely that it's going to be a group that doesn't appear after a quick Google search. A secretive group that orchestrated it all. Maybe even a group of beings that are also magical who want to control both sides of it. But to do that, they'd have to stage a coup. We already know that throughout history there's been so-called people that could survive hundreds of years, like Noah. So there's a chance that there are people who would be able to outlive everything that we know and possibly be able to plan hundreds of years at a time. Did the Russians know this? Is that where the 5-year plans came from while they were a communist nation? Something that is viewed by some as very wrong, though, these 5-year plans, but it's actually now taught in many schools, which is fucking weird. That not knowledge about Stalin, and obviously that's taught in colleges and schools, but instead the idea that you should plan your life in 5-year blocks, that's fucked, mate. If that's something that we've taken from a communist leader and gone, we'll pick out the parts of this. Like, why is it okay to pick out them parts? That I don't understand. Could it be that there's a constant war being fought against monsters happening right now, a magical battle that we could never comprehend, and even if we did, it would probably cause our brains to fracture faster than a kid graduating from MK Ultra. It's not out of the realms of possibility. There always seems to be some form of huge army attacking small groups of people. There was the Romans, obviously the Nazis. The British did it for quite a while, and supposedly they were fucking good at it. The Spanish were pretty good. They had a go. The Americans, they're giving it a go at the moment. But what if that's what the colonisation of America actually was? A place steeped in mystery and stories of magic and monsters that was attacked and pillaged by Europeans for a very long time. In realities, have wars ever really stopped? There's always someone swinging their dick around trying to eradicate people in one way or another, and we're led to believe it's for oil. gold or jewels, or but realistically, if a country is powerful enough to be able to openly attack another country in the modern world, then realistically, aren't they powerful enough to decide what is worth money? Surely if the most powerful country in the world decided that oil or fossil fuels were no longer worth money, for example, if someone decided not to base the worth of the dollar against barrels of oil, just like how it was decided that the dollar wouldn't be based against silver anymore, how it would be based now against gold, and then how from gold it was changed to oil. Right? If that was no longer the thing that paper was valued against, then someone powerful enough would be powerful enough to change the market in such a drastic way to make someone else more powerful, potentially, or make themselves more powerful. Because, for example, keeping it with the world around you, if someone decided that mouse testicles or bad taxidermy was what they said, $1 million is equal to 100 pairs of mouse testicles in resin figures, then that would make it so. Or then whoever had 200 mouse testicles would have $1 million. So the banks would all be filling up with mouse testicles rather than gold or oil, So the wars must be about something else, because they've already got the power. If they've got the power to convince the whole world that wars can happen and wars are okay, then they've got the power to take the oil and make the oil worthless. Do you know what I mean? Like, another story for another time. I'm not fucking informed enough for any of this. I've mentioned Jesus a couple of times as well, but not Judas. Some people believe that the first werewolf was in fact Judas, and that's why silver kills werewolves. Not the antimicrobial properties of it, but because Judas topped himself after ratting out Jesus for the Romans. And I'm going to have to end it there, guys, because this has been Pause for Thought. I'm the world around you, and this is Threshold FM. I'll see you in a bit.